Hi everyone, I trust you're keeping really well and thank you so much for joining us for another one of our studies in the book of James. This time we're in James chapter 5, and we're looking at verses 1 through 8 this evening. So I invite you now to pause the video and to read James chapter 5, 1 through 8, maybe read it through twice and then click play as we dive into this passage this evening. So let's recap. James has been calling throughout this letter for believers to return wholeheartedly to following Jesus, to love him with all of their hearts, all of their lives, to actually be authentic followers of him in every aspect of their life, not just with their words, but with their whole being. And this evening, as we come to James chapter 5, he has firmly in his sights the idea of wealth and riches. You see, he's trying to teach the church here that if you're going to follow Jesus, you got to follow him with all of your life, and that includes with your money. And for James and his society, money was an issue, just like it is for us here today. Money dominated many of the people of James's time's thoughts. It directed their lives, it controlled them. For those who were poor, they looked on with jealousy at those who were rich. And so it is with our society. The pursuit of wealth controls much of what we do. It controls many of our thoughts and dreams and ambitions. Let's think about it even for a moment. What we study at school, the subjects that we pick, are often with a university course in mind. And the university course that we have in mind is often because we want a particular job. And the reason that we want a particular job, often, not always, but often, is because of the salary attached to it. That's just one of the ways that money dominates us. We also compete with our peers, with our family members, to see who can accumulate the most money. We are in competition with those around us as we try to accumulate stuff. And the reason is that stuff that we accumulate, it signals to everyone else if we have been successful or not. So in our world, success is deemed and is determined upon how much stuff you have, how much you have accumulated. We can even go as far to say that where we shop, the brands that we buy, the holidays that we have, the homes that we live in, the restaurants that we eat in, it's all part of this pursuit of wealth and signalling to others how much we have. And James here writes, and he writes into this, and he says really, really important things to us this evening. Now, I want us to note that James is not saying that wealth is inherently evil. He's not saying that it's wrong to have lots of money. Rather, James is saying that it's what is done with your money or what is not done with your money that is the problem. So it's not having money that's the issue, but it's how you use it, what you use it for, and the heart behind it all. Now, as we dive into this passage, it's important for us also to note that the commentators tell us that James here shifts his audience. So no longer is he actually talking to the believers at this point directly, but actually he's talking to the wealthy landowners around Galilee. The people who owned the land around Galilee, in fact owned most of the land in the Roman Empire. They were very wealthy people. They were very well off. And James has them in his sights. He knows that whenever this letter arrives, that they too will catch wind of it. And it's a rhetorical device. It's a rhetorical device that is used throughout the Old Testament and in the New Testament that James is deploying here. He knows that the believers are obviously going to overhear this conversation between the rich and God, and therefore teaching the believers that they should not aspire to be like these wealthy people, because actually in their wealth they have forgotten God, and really they're just evil, foolish people. So it's a clever device that he's using. And here at this section of the letter, James uses some of the strongest words chapter 5, verse 1, come now. What is he doing? He's calling out the rich in this region, and he's calling them to change. He's calling them to weep, verse 1, and to howl, to stop living the lives that they have been, to pause, and to see the awful, selfish desires that they have been following, and instead to see Jesus, to live their lives for him instead. So what does he do? He comes here at the start of chapter 5 and he tells them that they are in great danger. They're in great danger because they are under the Lord's judgment. He will judge them one day for the way that they are living now. So he speaks to them and he tries to rouse them from their luxurious slumber. And we're going to learn this evening see three things that James attacks in this letter. And the first of them is this: hoarding. James goes after hoarding in verses 2 through 3. Your riches, your garments, your gold, what a waste, he says. They're all going to fade away. Your food, it will rot. Your clothes that you take pride in, they will fade. The moth will eat them. They will rip and be destroyed. And your finest jewellery, well, it's going to tarnish. It's going to corrode. It will crumble. He's saying, can't you see? Can't you see that what you're living for, what you're accumulating, is absolutely pointless? You've laid up treasure for yourself, but why? And in this, we too have to learn. We are people who love to hoard. As we've already discussed, it's the way that our generation determines success, by how much we have. You get as many acres as you can. You get as many properties as you can. You have as many nice holidays as you can. The more and more and more you get, the more successful you are. And it's just like a real life game of Hungry Hippos. The little game that we play as children, where we put all the balls into the middle and we have a hippo and we're tapping it to try and eat and gobble up as much as possible. That's how we live our lives, gobbling up as much as possible that the world has to offer us. Get more and more and more and more. And James says, stop. Why are you doing this? And you see, the problem again isn't in these things or the action itself, but it's in the motivation. It's a heart problem. James asks the question, why are you driven to accumulate this wealth? What's going on? So as we apply this to ourselves, why do we accumulate wealth? Why do we seek to be rich? Or if we have been blessed with wealth, what is it that we do with it? Is it to bless the church? Great. Is it to support missionary organisations? Well, that's excellent. Is it to help with the training of ministers and youth workers and church workers and church planters and missionaries? Then that's amazing. But if the reason that we have money or we seek to accumulate more is so that we have more than our neighbour, then we need to wise up. If it's to have a good life, well then we're a fool. If it's to build an empire, to sit back, relax, to eat, drink and be merry, then God says you've got it all wrong. Wealth is to be used. It is a blessing from God. It is a good gift. You see, all that we have is given to us by Him. Look at James chapter 1 verse 17. You see, here James displays and lays out for us this track that he'll pick up again in chapter 5, that every good gift, every perfect gift is from above. It's given by the Father. So God blesses us. He blesses us with money. Some of us will be successful. Some of us will have lots of money and wealth. But it's what we do with it. We in turn use that to bless others and to bless the church. It's how we use it. Secondly, James goes after injustice here in verse 4. In their wealth, they have become so careless with their money in relation to their flamboyant lifestyles, and yet, in this careless attitude with how they treat money, verse 4, they hold wages back from their workers. They have cheated and mistreated their workers. They get rich while they drive the poor into further and deeper poverty. They feast while their employees starve. In verse 6, they have condemned and murdered those who have done no wrong. And James warns here for a second time that the judgment will come. Because the cries of these people have been heard by the Lord, He will execute justice at the final judgment. You see, the Lord cares. The Lord cares about the poor. The Lord cares about those who are vulnerable in society. And it's our responsibility as Christians to also care about those in society who are poor and who are vulnerable. So James says here, make no mistake, you may swan around now enjoying your lavish lifestyle, enjoying all of your luxuries, but one day the Lord will return. One day you will stand before Him, and one day you will have to give an account. God is concerned for the poor and for the oppressed. Thirdly, what does James go after? He goes after extravagance in verse 5. You live in all your luxury and your self-indulgence. You see, now, it's important for us again to note, James is not saying that we cannot enjoy good things. We can. It's right for us to enjoy good things that God has blessed us with. He has given us many experiences, many good things that it is right for us to enjoy. But James is gunning here for the attitude in which we live and the attitude in which we search after these things, the attitude in which we ourselves live. See, the people that James is targeting here live only for themselves and for their own selfish desires. See, the goal should not be to just live a pampered life, a lavish life with all of the most extravagant, lavish accessories that we can afford, but rather, wealth should not be used solely for our benefit, but for the benefit of others. We should serve others. Our wealth is to be used. We're to be those who have in order to be those who give. And it's wise for a Christian to save, of course. It is wise for a Christian to have a healthy bank account. But the key is this, that we are people who give, that we are generous and kind, that we bless, that we give good gifts, that we encourage people through our money. And really what James is trying to help us to see is that this attitude, this type of life, is one that understands the gospel. In that, we have applied the gospel to ourselves. That we are so unworthy, that we don't deserve anything. But God in His kindness, God in His grace comes to us through His Son, and He lavishes His love upon us. He takes us from death and darkness and brings us into light and life. He treats us richly. And in His Son, we have this great inheritance that He saves us to, and that He promises to us, that we are now heirs and co-heirs with Him at a new family table with all our new family members. So what are we like? What's our attitude to be like? Well, we should remember where we have come from. And we should point others to Jesus. That we are just beggars showing other beggars where to find food. So the problem isn't in having lots of money. The problem is failing to recognize who has given it to you and refusing to use it to bless others. You see, the problem is not having money, but the problem is the love of money. 1 Timothy 6:10 warns us of that. The crime is not being wealthy, but hoarding, injustice, and extravagance is. Sam Allberry concludes about this passage this. He says, wealth is dangerous. When we understand the judgment of God on such attitudes, we will think twice before wanting to be like the ungodly wealthy around us. And this evening, that's why verse 7 and verse 8 are so important to us. Instead of desiring to be wealthy like those in our world, like some in our society, James encourages the church to be patient. But to be patient for what? Well, to be patient for the coming of the Lord. Because on that day, justice will be served. The wealth of those who have lived for themselves and not for God will be worthless in that day. All the gold, all the jewellery, all the clothes, all the land and property, it will be totally irrelevant. It will be futile and it will not save. So be patient, James says. Wait, just like the farmer who waits for the rain, so we are to be like that. We're to be patient. When the world seeks to be wealthy and to woo us with its wealth, we are to be patient and have our eyes on the Lord. When the world tries to impose its success markers on us and on our thinking, we are to be patient. When the world wants you to withhold your money or to spend it on yourself instead of the church or for the sake of the gospel, we have to be patient and not give in. And verse 8 is the key to this all. Verse 8, James says this: establish your hearts, for the coming of the Lord is at hand. You see, this is the antidote to the virus that is the love of money and the relentless pursuit of money. To establish your hearts. The Greek word here in this word is starizo, and that means to steadfastly fix one's face, to render constant, to confirm your mind, to keep your face turned, to make firm, to strengthen, to build, to plant. So James is saying to guard yourself against living like the world, to stop yourself becoming like all the other people around us who hoard, who are just like squirrels hoarding nuts in the forest of life. Fix your face towards Christ today. Establish your hearts towards Christ and to His return. Jesus will come again soon. Will wealth be important then? Absolutely not. You see, James says, raise your head, raise your eyes away from counting all of your money and see the Messiah. See Jesus. See the one who has lavished His love upon you, who has paid the debt that you owed, that you could not pay because of sin, who has engulfed you with grace and with mercy. Wealth or poverty in this life, James says, your life should all be about Jesus. Establish your heart. Fix your eyes on Him. He will return again soon. See what is important. See what's truly important. You see, Jesus comes, and He's the one who becomes poor and beaten and mocked, so that the poor and the beaten and mocked could be loved and could be rescued and restored and redeemed. So that the poor and the beaten, that the vulnerable of society could be called sons and daughters of God. Jesus is the one who comes to be despised and to be rejected, to have no place to lay His head, so that we would be welcomed by our Father, so that we would have our dwelling in the Father's house. Jesus says, if it were not so, I would have told you, I go to prepare a place for you. So to those who starve, Jesus promises the greatest feast ever known to man. To those who long for more, Jesus says, I am enough. I will satisfy. And to those who wish for success, Jesus says, you are heirs and you are co-heirs of a heavenly kingdom. What more could you want? Friends, this evening, let us see that the riches of this world are like a couple of pennies in light of the incredible riches that we have in God. The hymn writer puts it like this, and I trust this is true for each of us. I'd rather have Jesus than silver or gold. I'd rather be His than have riches untold. I'd rather have Jesus than houses or lands. I'd rather be led by His nail-pierced hands than to be the king of a vast domain, or to be held in sin's dread sway I'd rather have Jesus than anything this world affords today. Friends, would we rather have riches or the rescuer? Would we rather have lavish living or the Lord? I trust that for each of us today, we will say, give me Jesus. Give me Jesus. You can have all this world, but give me Jesus. Let us be patient as we wait for the Lord's returning. Let us establish our hearts. Let us fix our faces on Him. And let us live as genuine, authentic Christians, as wholehearted disciples, holding nothing back from Him. Some questions are going to appear now on the screen. Take a few minutes, pause the video, and reflect on these questions. Apply them to your heart and to your life. And before we close, let me pray. Father in heaven, we thank you this evening for your word to us. We thank you that it is so challenging. Lord, help us not to live like the world as it pursues wealth and money for its own selfish ambition. Rather, Father, establish our hearts, fix our faces towards you and towards the beauty of your Son. Father, help us to be generous people. Help us to be people who give and who bless and who encourage others and who give to the work of the gospel. Help us not to be selfish whenever it comes to our bank accounts. Father, help us to live lives that are shaped by your Son. Holy Spirit, help us with this word. We pray in Jesus' strong name. Amen.